Hi everyone, and welcome to my review of the BLON BLMax and kind of this BLON madness, let's put it that way. Anyway, I thought that it would actually be the best to compare the BLMax with its older brothers or its predecessors or whatever you want to call them, and see where the Max sits. As you might recall, this was the box that it came in, and I did that like kind of mini review. This is the usual BLON tips, the usual box which came already, well, box no, the case that came already with the BL03, that kind of fabric one. The cable, very reminiscent of the A8. I mean, I'm not going to say it is the A8 cable, but it sure looks like the A8 cable. And yeah, in terms of accessories, basic stuff, but more than acceptable. I mean, after all, we are talking about an IM which cost anywhere between $35 and $40, so nothing too crazy in terms of what to expect. Sorry, let me just put this away properly. There we go. Okay, that's it. Okay, on to the IM itself. Well, actually, before I go on to it, let me just kind of introduce you to what's going on here. So over here we have the BL01 on our right, BL Mini, BL03, the BLMax, BLA8, and the BL05S. As you might see, I have got actually more than one A8. I've got several O3s, also more than just one BL Mini, and I've also got several O1s, but this is basically what I wanted to bring here to, and there's a reason why I will talk about the multiples that I have here. Anyway, on to the A8, the BLMax. It is a big boy, and I mean, when I mean big boy, I mean big boy. It makes the A8 pale besides it, and the A8 was a big IM. The BLON, the 03, looks like its baby. It's when I say this thing is big, this thing is big, and it has its advantages and its disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage is obviously if you have normal sized ears, this thing will be well, normal to small sized ears, this thing will be a hassle to fit, because it's not very ergonomic in terms of what its shape is or anything. So if there was issues with the 03, and if there was some issues as well with the Mini, you're definitely going to have issues with the BLMax. Out of all the BLON IMs, the two actually that actually fit me personally the best with the A8 and the 05Ss. These two, we've got more kind of, let's say, usual shapes, and I had no real complaints about the fitment. The 03 was a pain, I mean real pain. The same thing for the Mini. The 01, it was neither, it was whatever. This thing as well was a pain for me to actually get to fit, and although with other tips I was getting perhaps slightly better sonic results, the one that was only able to really fit me and stay there and hold the IM in place was these reverse star lines. Excuse me, I'm guessing the grip that it has was what helped out. So, you know, to start things off, BLON, please, I appreciate, and I'm sure we all appreciate the fact that you try and do stuff which is somewhat outside of the box in terms of its appearance and so on and so forth. I mean, the Mini looks fantastic, the A8 looks amazing, but this was a nice attempt which ergonomically failed. I am sure that there will be more people complaining about its fitment than the ones that will not complain about how it fits. But anyway, it is what it is. It is chunky and heavy. The reality is that it has two drivers, a 10mm and a 6mm. Rumors are that it has the 10mm driver of the A8 with the 6mm driver of the Mini. I can't say it's true or not. Perhaps I'll open up one and actually find out. I do have another set of these, so I might as well do it and see what it is. And yeah, basically that's it. I mean, so with not fitting very well, things like noise isolation and so on and so forth kind of fall out the door. You know, it's going to be very much dependent on how well it fits to you and what kind of isolation you're going to be getting and so on and so forth. On to what I guess we are all interested and want to know, which is what is the sound of the BLMax. And to kind of maybe put it into context, let me just start by saying the following. The 03 has set the bar very high. In that love it or hate it, it was well executed. It was well done. It didn't have perfect everything, but it had a lot more going for it in terms of well done than not well done. What was not perfect, maybe the highs could be somewhat sibilant or harsh sometimes. Maybe there was a little bit too much mid bass. Maybe the technicalities are not its forte. But the reality is, it's got a very coherent sound. It's very tonally correct. It's a very pleasing and engaging earphone to listen to. And the reason why I have here 3, and I've actually got a lot more, it's because these 3 are the best sounding ones that I have. Which means, and what I'm saying by that is that there are definite QC issues with the BLON, and I guess that some people that maybe didn't like the BLON were ones that didn't get the good BLON. It's the same thing as the QKZ VK4. If you get a good QKZ VK4, and it took me 6 pairs before I actually got one, you have a fantastic AM. The BLON, I think, also suffers somewhat of that. They all have very good bass, true, but then what differs from one to the other in terms of when they were produced is, are they more aggressive in the mids, are they more aggressive in the highs? That definitely does change along the production runs. And these 3 are my 3 best sounding ones. They sound absolutely amazing, fantastic, nothing else. I mean, they've got the most sub bass extension, where the others that I have got a sub bass roll off. These ones have got a definite sub bass continuation. It goes into the sub bass, rising actually. So, you know, make of that what you wish. But the reality is, the blondes that I have here and that I'm going to be using, these 03s that I have here and I'm going to be using to compare with the rest, are, in my opinion, a cut above the average ones, I would say. Okay, so the BLON has this kind of overall very correct sound. There's really nothing that you can falter. I mean, after all, we're talking, at one point you could have gotten them for $24. So how can you fault it? Yes, true. You can argue that, oh, once you factor in things like cable and tips and that and this, and you are probably looking at an IM that costs $50 or $60. So won't there be other things which will make more sense? Probably yes. I'm not going to deny it. But that's the sound of the 03. When the 05 came out, it tried to polish that, but it failed miserably. And the S was a correction of that. And the S definitely, in my opinion at least, improved in making the sound more technically correct. It lowered the mid bass, and so there is a definite lowering, and it's more sensible there. It lowered the 4-5K region slightly as well, making it less sibilant. And overall, I actually, when I did the test for the 05S, I actually said that it sounded very similar to the HC Sound Heart Mirror when modified. And there were people that actually opened up one and the other, and apparently the driver was almost identical. Well, I cannot say. I really didn't open up the 05. I have opened up the HC Sound Heart Mirror, and I've seen the driver, and well, like I say, I can only base myself on what others have mentioned. But anyway, that's irrelevant. What is relevant is that compared to the 03, there was an improvement of sound on certain aspects, and it was, in my opinion, more of a side grade. Then the 01 came along, and that kind of tried to maintain, let's say, the base of the 03 to a certain extent, and change the signature up top. And that signature, in my opinion, was well. There was a certain amount of success to it. I wouldn't say there wasn't, but at the same time, if there was a little bit more information, a little bit more perhaps technical resolution on certain aspects, it also, there was something that it just wasn't right. And the truth is the 01, in my opinion at least, never really picked up. The fit again was an issue. I think the only real thing that was working for the 01 was its price, because I mean you could get these things for like $18. So then enter the BL Mini, and the Mini is basically a 01. It's very similar in its overall sound and the way it is, you know, was tuned. Loads of extension down low in terms of how low it reaches. I mean, seriously, just maybe even a little bit more than the 03s. Well, the 03s that I have at least. And it's the biggest complaints was of a certain harshness around 6-7K. And yes, it is true, there is a certain harshness there, and a very recessed mid-range, which is true. The mid-range, yeah, compared to the 03 was more recessed. Compared to the 01, it was about the same thing. Like, that's why I said the 01 and the Mini are very similar. They kind of just a remake. Sorry. Then came the A8, which was supposed to be the epitome of what BLON had done up to now. And the A8, in my opinion, kind of, it was a trying of bringing together a whole bunch of other signatures from before, in that it had kind of the bass response of the 03, with certain aspects of the 05 there as well, in terms of the mid-range. At least that's what I found. It wasn't the mid-range of the A8 wasn't as well. And when by mid-range, I'm talking about the 2.5 to 5K compared to the 03. It was slightly more laid back and more reminiscent perhaps of the 05S. But again, there was just something about the A8, and especially I found the A8 to be a little bit too shouty because you see, the A8 had certain aspects as well of the Mini, in that peak around 6-7K, that tendency to peak around that area, and that kind of made itself very noticeable. So it wasn't really it was again a different tuning attempt, which in my opinion wasn't overall that successful. Maybe the technicalities could have improved slightly, but again, it wasn't a major improvement over the 03. And now finally the BLMax. And the BLMax is what? The BLMax is, in my opinion, again trying to learn from previous tunings, and they've gone for the bass tuning of the 05S, definitely, with the mids of the 03. So it definitely has the kind of the mid presentation of the 03 without a doubt. And then it has this kind of peakiness around 8-9K, at least this version that I have here, which I don't know, it just makes it a little bit shouty, a little bit fatiguing. When you're listening to it low down or with volume low, you don't really notice it, and you notice what you do notice, yes, is the vocals are well, the vocals are nice, let's put it that way. They're not fantastic, they're nice. When you do increase volume, the bass then comes alive, because when you listen to it with the volume low, you feel that the bass is a little bit recessed. So when you turn up the volume, then the bass comes up, the highs come up, and up to a certain point, everything becomes very, very nice, very interesting, very fun. But then all of a sudden, the highs just start really getting to you, and it becomes, to my opinion at least, can become even more aggressive than the 03. So personally, in my opinion, if there have been some improvements made with the BLMax, in an attempt to create this new IM, in the sense that they took some of the traits of the 03 with the 10mm driver, let's put it that way. They also maybe the 6mm driver, yeah, it hasn't been ideally tuned, and it's got some of the stuff that the Mini has in it, that aggressiveness, that excessive shoutiness that sometimes could have happened. And even the A8 had that shoutiness, like I was saying. So overall, in my opinion, it has not been a marked improvement over the 03 sonically. Where, yes, you can say that there's been an improvement, and in that aspect, yes, then it becomes something which is interesting to own and have, is that for the price, for the $35-40, which is roughly what the BLON 3 is now costing you. The 03 now is roughly going for about 30, 34, 32, 34. You get a much better cable. You get an IM that has, it has fun factor to it. It has got a fun factor to it, and can appeal then to some people. But at the same time, sonically, if, in my opinion, it still stays behind the 03. Technicalities wise, out of all of these, the best one is the 05S, undeniably, in my opinion. Then the A8 and the 03, technicalities, soundstage, imaging, all that, are very similar. And the technicalities here of the Max also kind of fall in here. So in terms of technicalities, so like I say, in soundstage, imaging, detailed retrieval, this is no beast in that aspect. It will be a fun IM to listen to, EDM and that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. But if you're looking for something with detailed retrieval capability and being able to pinpoint everything, no, that's not the case here. But then again, like I said, across the board of BLON products, technicality has never been their strong point. Perhaps only the 5S stands out there slightly above the rest. So it's more than it's a positive average, let's put it that way, while the rest are a negative average. In terms of value for money, then yes, probably right now, as things are standing, and then availability and so on and so forth, I would say that the BLMax is probably the one that represents the better value for money. Although you can find the 05S at a very similar price, the problem here is it brings that mediocre cable. So if I factor in the cable as a plus point, then definitely this will be the best value for money. In terms of overall sound signature, I think the one that makes the most sense, honestly, in my opinion, with all its flaws, with all its issues, well, the two that make most sense is the 03 and the 05S. The rest, in my opinion, all fall behind. There have been attempts, they've done nice design, they've worried about all of that, but the sound signature still has, or the overall presentation of sound still doesn't beat these two. I mean, tonality wise, timbre wise, these two are still the most correct, in my opinion. Fair enough, the A8 doesn't fall that much behind, but the Mini definitely falls behind tonality wise. The 01's close to the A8, but slightly behind that as well. And yeah, that's basically it. I mean, it's yet another launch. Apparently there's still going to be something else coming out this year from BLON. Let's see what that is. And all I would like to say is that I'm a big fan of BLON. I mean, seriously, you guys have no idea how many BLONs I have. I've got 6 or 7 03s, so I don't know, call that what you want to call. I've got a whole bunch of 01s as well. I've got a few more minis, so I'm a big BLON fan, big BLON fan. And if I wasn't, I wouldn't buy multiples, and I wouldn't be so sometimes disappointed, because more and more I convinced myself that this was a fluke. This was just something that just threw together, did some tuning, and yes, it came out very good, very good. And I mean, no disrespect to whoever was involved in terms of the tuning of it. I honestly don't disrespect the person. I don't know who they were, but that's more the impression I get, while the rest have all been attempts, but they've set the bar so high with this that it's really going to be very, very hard. I mean, that's the reality, in my opinion. Anyway, guys, that's been my take on the BLMax. On all the BLs, basically. I talked about all of them in reality. And yeah, we'll see you again soon. All right, take care. Bye bye.